Hey, it's Brent at the White Lab Workshop. I've got a fun project to share with you today. We've got several boxes of scrap oak chunks from my grandfather's workshop that are ready to fuel some bonfires. The other day I got curious and decided to see what they look like if I clean them up on the table saw. Turns out they clean up pretty well. That got the old wheels turning, and I came up with a few ideas we can use them for. The first one is what we're going to talk about today, a Tic Tac Toe game. It's a really simple design and it turned out great, especially considering the initial appearance of the scrap wood. The best part is I recruited one of my daughters to help me because it felt like a great beginner type project to let her run with. Let's take a look at how we did it. We picked out 3 of the 2-inch wide scrap pieces that I had already cleaned up, which were long enough to cut into a square after gluing them together. Then my building buddy got to work slathering glue all over them and clamping them up. By the time I was ready to move on to the next step, my wife had snatched up my daughter to help her with a project for her channel, the White Lab House. So I sanded it up to 180 grit and cut it to square on the table saw. My wife felt much better about me risking losing my fingers on the table saw than my daughter anyway. I also lined up a stop block to cut small dados for the lines at about 1/8 of an inch deep. My original idea was to use a V-groove router bit, but I didn't have one, and this project really didn't justify the cost of getting a new one. I did think it would look a little nicer with a chamfer around the outside, so I set up my blade for a 45-degree cut. I eyeballed the rip fence to get a chamfer that would roughly match the 1/8 inch depth of the dados. As soon as I started cutting, I realized I had set the blade way higher than was necessary for my small chamfer. But it was just my fingers at risk, not my daughter's, so no big deal. The chamfer does look quite nice, but I didn't account for it with the outside dimensions of the board. So each square is no longer actually square since the chamfer removed material from 1 or 2 sides on each square, but not from all 4. My original idea of the V-groove would have evened them up a bit, but taking that all into account when sizing the actual board would work too. My building buddy was back again, so I set her up at the drill press with some stop blocks to position the 4 corner holes. We've got a Forstner bit installed that's just slightly larger than the dowel I bought for the pegs. Then we took the side stop block out so we could get the remaining outside holes drilled. The center hole was perfectly positioned freehand, just like a good high five. I then went back to the table saw to cut the dowel pieces to a length at about twice the depth of the holes. I made sure to use a temporary stop block so that the small pieces wouldn't get pinched between the saw blade and the stop block, sending them flying across the garage. I was reminded about this useful technique when the first piece did get pinched between the saw blade and the stop block and tried to go flying across the garage. We cut enough pieces so that each flare could fill the board. Things tend to disappear around this house, so we wanted extras. I decided to try medium walnut Danish oil for this project, so my building buddy got to work rubbing it on. This is another time where the V-groove would have made it easier to spread the oil into the grooves. She struggled with the dados and the holes, so I had to step in and give her a hand. I then fumbled my way through those while she did half of the dowel pieces. I figured out a pretty good system for the holes on literally the last hole I finished. Better late than never, I guess. We let it dry and admired our work. Dixie and Duke, the resident white labs, were pretty impressed too. The only thing left was to give it a try.
Okay.
Who's first? Okay. Oh. Oh, for the same thing.
That wasn't very smart. Which way?
I win! I'm gonna do first.
No!
Good game, Steph.
I really thought I just won.
If you like this video, consider hitting that thumbs up button and subscribing to the channel. We've got a lot more projects of various sizes queued up and would love to share them with you. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.